17. 17.
Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Front Page, the first show of our 2019 spring semester season here at Cayuga Community College. This is a show that is produced by the college and put on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, as well as the college's radio station 89.1 here at the campus. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. On July 27th, the governor of the state of New York came to the Auburn Public Theater to announce that the city of Auburn was going to receive a $10 million downtown revitalization initiative, better known as DRI, funds for the year. And since then, the city has been hard at work deciding how that money will be divided up, what the process will be for doing that dividing up, and what projects will be recommended to the governor later this spring. And we're delighted to have in the studio today with us Christina Selvik, who is the Director of Programs and Grants for the City of Auburn, as well as Jennifer Haynes, the Director of the Department of Economic Development and Planning for the City of Auburn, two regular appearances. You've been here on a regular basis, so we thank you for being here to talk about DRI. As we tape this right now, in about half an hour, you're going to have another public meeting. So we'll go from that context back and forth. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on and talking. For those who have been living in a vacuum for the last 3 years, yes. Forget that. What is the DRI?
Sure. So in 2016, Governor Cuomo decided to create another sort of revitalization program for our municipalities in New York State, and this one is the Downtown Revitalization Initiative Program. It is a $100 million program where municipalities all across New York State would submit applications, and 10 communities, one in each of the regional economic development areas.
Better known as the Red Cs.
Yeah, the Red Cs would be chosen for that funding. In the Central New York region, the city of Oswego, and then Cortland.
So this is your third one. So yes. This is your third time. It was a charm.
Yeah, it was a charm.
Okay.
So I think I was quoted on that.
So what was the? So we'll kind of go all over the place. What was the difference between the application in 16 and 17 to get to a winner in 18?
Yeah. So a common theme throughout all the applications is the community's history. The first application in 2016 really focused on the need for a downtown visitor center, or one that focused on the national park system for Harriet Tubman. It was very heavy and weighted for Harriet Tubman projects and improvements.
And you got that separately?
So we did.
Okay.
We did get that separately.
So you're really
that
getting
was
20
after.
million.
Yes, and I think the DRI applications kind of set us up for future funding from the state. So they have been helpful, and they've been instrumental in trying to communicate projects to the public.
So what will this money go towards in the global sense?
So right now what's happening, and you mentioned the meeting that's going to be happening in just a few minutes. There's a local planning committee that's made up of leaders in our community, not-for-profit, private sector, government officials who are working with New York State and the state's consultant, Bergman Associates, to put together a full slate of projects. This is their 6th meeting today, and so far they have prioritized 17 projects for approximately $12.5 million worth of funding. They'll be working on confirming that slate, which they will do a final vote on next month at their last meeting.
So let's chop that up in pieces. So the first piece is, this is grant money, but you have to come up with either a match or some substantial. You have to, for example, secure the property. If it's a property, you have to have that all done. Those are not, acquisition costs are not part of this, correct?
That's correct.
So you have to have skin in the game. It's not just that Albany writes you a check. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the process you're using? I know you have this public group. How large is it?
We have 14 members, I think, on the LPC. So the local planning committee was actually created by New York State. So once the city was announced the funding, the city submitted names to the state that they thought would work well together and would represent either some project interest or greater interest in the downtown area. And New York State ultimately did the final selection of the members on the LPC.
So some of those individuals, so for example, President Durant, who represents the college,
Right.
is on there. Angela Dodabo, who represents the Auburn Public Theater, my old friend, and still current friend, Jim Hutchinson,
Yes.
who's with your local development corporation, Mayor Quill, I think Councilor Dia Carvajal.
Correct.
You have the local pastor at Westminster.
Yes.
Yep.
You have people, are most of them living or have some association with a downtown?
That was almost one requirement by
Okay.
the state, was to either have public or municipal interest or be associated with an agency that had some interest in those projects in the downtown area.
And so those names were submitted to the governor, but the governor's office makes those final appointments. Those are not a city.
No.
You may make recommendations, but that,
That's right.
okay.
Yep.
Did the governor's office come up with people that were not on your list?
Yes, and then they did not approve some members that were submitted.
Okay.
So
And they're doing all these. This is, so when you said structured, it sounds like the governor's office is structured this very much. So you've got Bergman Associates.
correct.
And I moderated a panel last week for the Wednesday morning roundtable, which you were both part of. They are consultants among a pool of consultants that the state gives you a list, but you must use those consultants and pay those consultants
So
out of the 10 million.
they're actually employees of the state.
Oh,
So
okay.
the city, we are actually, our job was to secure the grant funds. So 3 years we worked to secure the program. The funds were announced for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. Then New York State stepped in, and it's really Department of State. So it's that agency that is leading all of the discussions. They have the agreement with Bergman Associates. So Bergman is a direct hire of New York State.
But that's who,
And
but you're
They
required to
come in and
have.
facilitate, yes.
Okay.
They are required.
They were actually assigned to us.
Okay.
And we think that is really lucky for us. We've done a lot of work with Bergman,
Yeah.
so they
So
know
the city had done work with
they
them
know our
already.
community very
Okay.
well, so that was just a great match. for
So
us.
not to get too far ahead of what, well, maybe we'll go, well, we will get. So you originally had how many applications before you won the award in July?
We submitted twice before.
No, how many
Oh,
applications were part? Because
So,
you
right,
kind of picked and pooled a
That's
lot of
right.
projects, correct?
we did. We were trying to work towards projects that had not been submitted previously, or were still in need of some gap financing for funds, and ones that would leverage existing initiatives, as downtown was, an ever-changing landscape last summer. So, so we have 14 or 15 projects in there. There's two categories that had several projects listed. We had hoped to do more brownfields initially, and then our small grant fund.
So in the, of those roughly more than a dozen, you then opened up the process again, correct?
Correct.
Once you received the governor's announcement. First of all, why did you do that? Why did you open up the process? Weren't those projects enough originally?
So I think there was an interest in making sure that we had, even though we had been at it for 3 years, just making sure that we were capturing the full pool of interest in DRI funds. So we really wanted to make sure we were soliciting everything and every idea that was out there.
So I'm assuming of the original 14 or so, how much did they total?
I think we were right at, we were way over, actually, the 10 million because of the revolving programs that were in there.
So of the new applications you have received, have any of them made the cut to this final list that you'll be starting? How many of those were merged into the new group?
I would have to, I don't know, maybe half of them.
Yeah, I would say at least half.
So some of those that are in the original group
Yes.
are out.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So I'm not asking for a specific, unless you have an example, but why would somebody be out of the list versus staying in the list?
I think some of it, there's many different things that the LPC has taken a look at. One of the things that Bergman Associates has done is they have spent a lot of time and effort with each of the project sponsors, the ones that were originally in the application,
So
and
it is
then
not
those.
just these 6 meetings they're coming to. They're doing some
lot of work behind the
hand-holding
scenes.
and
Correct.
process behind the scenes.
Right.
Okay.
So what they're looking at is one of the big things is project readiness.
Okay.
So, and have they secured their building? You know, what does their financing look like? What's their business plan look like? So some of the original projects
So something might have been we think we can.
Right.
If we do this and do that, you want to be, we are ready to go. We have
Exactly.
this, and this is what we need you to
Right.
complete this job. Is job creation a requirement of all these projects?
Not necessarily.
Okay. And for those who haven't, again, been living under a rock, there's been lots of news stories. I think the city's done several shows on this here. What are among the final projects that people might be aware of or might be interested in? Save the police station for last, because that's the odd one out.
Yes, yes.
And no disrespect to Chief
Yep.
Butler.
So, no. So probably one of the more transformational ones downtown is going to be the Metcalf Plaza building for East Hill Family Medical.
Okay.
They're focusing on major interior improvements as well as exterior, which will really update, this 1960s building and make it more contemporary and hopefully user-friendly.
Okay.
So-
Other projects?
The Auburn Public Theater has a really exciting project planned. They are going to be renovating their bottom floor for performance space, as well as creating a cafe on the corner of Exchange Street and Genesee Street.
And in that particular case, and I only say this because I think we've all been saturated with emails, they're in a public campaign.
Correct.
So they're trying, I think it's at the end of this week, so if you want to donate to the Auburn Public Theater, you can. But they are at a $600,000 match program. I think, I don't know what the numbers
Yeah,
are.
with the total final.
But they're close, they're within, I thought they said 4% on Monday, or 2% to close that out. But that's part of what they need to get a
Yes.
grant, which will be part of what is
Right.
part of the DRI, correct?
Right.
Okay.
It goes back to what you said about having skin in the game.
Okay.
All of these projects, they have to have some sort of match requirement, except for the public projects. There's the LPC put some standards in place that they're looking for a certain amount of funding from the project sponsors.
So downtown may not necessarily be downtown as it was envisioned, let's say, for the BID, the Business Improvement District. It's kind of I don't want to say gerrymandered, but it's a little bit elongated.
Yes.
You go down as far as the Schweinfurth now?
Yes, we actually go to Parker Street and we
Okay.
include the National Park
Okay.
there. Yep. And then go all the way east to North Fulton Street,
Okay.
up East Hill there. And then we cross the arterial a little bit to collect Seminary Plaza there. And then we really use the BID as the southern border.
And then you've got Market Street in there
So-
and all that. So, because I think this is a cool one, so tell me what you're thinking about at the Schweinfurth and Cayuga Museum. And we'll have Ms. Wise on in a couple weeks. She'll talk about, but what are you thinking for the Cayuga Museum?
Excellent. So
Really, it's the Schweinfurth and the Cayuga Museum have made a proposal to do sort of a campus approach where they would make improvements to both of their buildings and the landscaping around to make it look and feel more like one campus instead of two separate places. So both of the buildings need work, but they really want to kind of tie the landscaping in together.
So we talked about three not-for-profits, Auburn Public Theater, the museums, and East Hill Medical. You've also got housing on there. I think Market Street, you have the Borzas.
So, yes.
So that's going to be, what type of housing are they looking at?
I think they mentioned affordable.
Right, they are an affordable housing provider now. What they're looking for in this application is some help with their commercial and common areas, and they would set up some assistance for their housing projects in the future.
And then you also have continuing to work on the entrance to downtown, which would be John Street in that area as well.
Yes, yes.
So your group will, when I say your group, but the LPC will finalize today their meeting to do what? What's this afternoon's plan?
Yep.
Or as people are watching it, this past afternoon's plan?
Yes. So they have a tentative slate already of 16 projects totaling 12.5 million that they'd like to prioritize. There are still some that they needed more information on, so there's about 6 or 7 that they have left to review and decide if they're going to add them to the strategic plan.
Okay, so work with me on the math question here. So if you're $12 million and Bergman and Associates is paid out of the 10, you got less than $10 million. Does that mean you send these projects to Albany? They get to sign off on them?
That's correct.
They have to sign off on them.
Yes. So we don't, the city and the community ultimately does not get to choose the final list.
So can Albany delete?
And they'll have to because
Because
they
you'll
only
over-
have 9.7 to distribute.
And I'm
So
assuming Cortland and Oswego submitted more than you can submit.
We're
submit
required.
More. You're required to.
Yes.
All right. Can they add projects?
I don't think I've heard of that happening yet.
I know because I say that because
The
I
state
know.
can get creative, I'm sure.
Well,
but-
it may be considered a success now, but there was a lot of criticism of the governor 4 years ago when he built the amphitheater across from the state fairgrounds
Right.
because nobody had asked for it in Syracuse, supposedly. I'm not sure if that's the case with former county executive Joni Mahoney, but he put something in that wasn't
Right.
in the plan. That's not part of this process.
No, I mean, we're moving ahead several projects that were part of the application that came in as part of an open call that support our comprehensive plan and other initiatives downtown for housing, et cetera.
And when do you have to make these recommendations by?
End of March.
So that then goes to when we'll see the money. But before we get to that, let's talk about the one item that people may not necessarily think is a downtown revitalization initiative, though it does impact downtown, is the new police station.
Yes,
Okay, so
fire station.
fire station, sorry. Chief Morbido, I shouldn't have said Chief Butler, sorry. So where are you looking at putting the new fire station?
So it is the corner of Seminary, I think it's Seminary Ave and
Nelson.
and Nelson Street.
Okay, and any idea what the cost would be overall?
It's going to be about a $10 million project.
So you would be using you're recommending that part of the DRI money be used towards this, correct? About how much?
1.2.
And that is not odd for a municipality to ask for some improvement. Cortland
Yes.
did some infrastructure improvements?
They asked for over half of the DRI funding.
And did
for,
they get
for
over
public.
half?
So yes, so they're doing major Main Street improvements with those funds. So I actually think the city's being working very well and prioritizing our private sector and not-for-profits and making sure that they can move ahead with their projects. We only have 2 projects that were left on the list for public infrastructure projects.
What are those?
So, so the shared public safety building and then the State Street Event Plaza, so we can take care of the wall and that vacant lot downtown.
Got you. You're talking about the Callis lot.
So
Yes.
yes, the
Okay.
former Cal building.
So you have some money already in hand
Yes.
for the fire station? About how much?
$2 million in grant funds already. We're looking to leverage another 1.2. Then the city would need to negotiate a lease agreement and hopefully go to construction this summer.
So in that particular case, you would literally be 1/3 of the building would be done by grant money or outside money
Correct.
versus going to taxpayers. And is that the theory behind this?
Yes.
Okay. What would happen to the existing building on Market Street?
We still need to figure that out. So it's definitely very marketable. It has a lot of potential uses. I think the mayor elaborated on
He did.
those
So
on Wednesday morning.
he said, so for example, he's talked about housing
Yes.
on the upper floors, some retail space. There's been a talk about a farmer's market. I think you've been a director of planning for how long now?
Since 2007.
And you have been with the planning office for almost more than 20 years now.
25.
So, 25. Farmers market's been a big priority for the
Yes.
city.
Yeah.
You've moved it around.
Yep.
But one of the thoughts is you've got large bay areas in there, and that might be. So that is not a building, why I want to say this, it is not a building that is going to come down.
No.
No,
No.
absolutely
You would
not.
repurpose it.
No.
Correct.
It
Okay.
has historical significance and
Okay. But when people say you're moving from one, well, what do you do with a fire station?
So-
It's unlike a school, but there are other options you can do.
absolutely, it would be a good adaptive reuse project.
And nobody would have imagined West Middle being what it
Right.
is
Sure.
today 5 years ago.
Right.
Yep.
So let's cut to the timeline so that so the public can know what's going on, and then also you can get to your meeting. So what is the timeline from now on?
So the timeline is submit the plan at the end of March. We're waiting on Albany then to select the
How long
projects
does it
that they want to
usually
fund.
take?
Several months, so
Okay.
we won't hear until June or July. At which point then state agencies will step in and they will partner with those projects that best suit those state agencies, go into a grant agreement, and that will probably take 3 to 6 months. So now we're well into the fall. So we will not see shovels in the ground for these funds until 2020.
And then people should be patient that some of these items will not be up and running until 2020.
It'll take several years.
21,
Yeah.
22,
Yes.
in that. That means money coming into the economy and all that, but besides that and besides these projects, in the end, what do you hope, and if it's different from what Albany hopes, what is your hope that all of this DRI accomplishes?
You know, housing continues to support our downtown. Every time we do housing improvements, I think we continue to see more reinvestment in downtown. So, you know, I hope that they look favorable on the housing components because that continues to support our
And
efforts.
is it people who are just of a younger generation? I don't want to call them Gen X or Y or Z, as I heard for the first time the other day. Is that who's coming downtown, or is it a mix of who's coming downtown?
It's a real mix, and if you talk to some of the developers that have put housing in place, they'd say, you know, it's young professionals, it's baby boomers, folks that are, you know, selling their homes in the neighborhoods and retiring and wanting to be closer to downtown and restaurants and be able to walk. It's a real mix from what we've heard. So.
Well, I'm going to let you get to your meeting, but I hope you'll come on in a couple months and tell us what you finalized as your projects and where everything
Absolutely.
goes from there, and then just a normal city update on what's going on at planning.
Great.
But,
That sounds
thanks
good.
for your time.
Thanks for having us.
We have had the city's Director of Planning and Economic Development, Jennifer Haynes, on with us, as well as the Director of Capital Projects and Grants, Christina Selvik, to talk about the DRI. This is the $10 million that has been given to the city of Auburn and earmarked by Albany for downtown revitalization. We just want to give you a couple of programming notes. We'll be back on Thursday with 2 shows. Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeff Parazola will be in for a district update on inside government. He'll also tell us about the state of funding for schools like Auburn. And then we'll also, on Beyond the Front Page, have a quick update from the Auburn Chamber Orchestra about their continuing season. In fact, they'll be on Saturday at 2 p.m. They'll be at the Auburn Alliance Church for a 2 p.m. concert, and we'll be talking to you about that as well. We'll be back next Tuesday with Tracy Verrier, the head of the Cuyahoga Economic Development Agency, to talk about what work her office is doing. And then we'll finish off the week with Justin Woods, the county administrator, for an update on the county, as well as a discussion about the new visitor center. In the coming weeks, we'll have Jeff Dygert, the city manager, as well as the Cuyahoga Museum's new executive director, Kristen Wise, on. We'll also be hearing from the new Owasco Watershed Inspector Program, and Ed Wagner will be the town supervisor of Owasco. We'll be bringing him on. He starts on Monday. I'm Guy Cosentino for Beyond the Front Page. We thank you for watching. If you'd like to communicate with us and send us your ideas for guests or questions, you can contact us at Beyond the Front Page, 139 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021, or at cozguytho@aol.com. Again, I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We hope you have a good night, and we'll see you back here in the studio on Thursday.